Let's begin. I just want to take a moment now to uphold my stakehold and reconciliation where I live and work. So right now, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm presenting today and pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. Being that we are online today in Australia, and that means we're on many different Aboriginal lands virtually right now. And so I always reflect that Indigenous Australians have looked after the land that we're so fortunate to live and work on. But I want to also note that Indigenous Australians have a very unique cultural perspective on work-life balance enrichment. So, for example, research demonstrates that we actually need to continue to look into Indigenous cultural practices and examine ways of providing more flexibility with respect to cultural and family practices at work. So I also extend a very warm welcome and acknowledgement to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders here today. So nice to meet you. I'm Monique. I'm a PhD candidate, a provisional psychologist, and I'm currently completing a Master of Psychology clinical. So I'm a coach here at Uprise. And as I mentioned earlier, today I am presenting a 20-ish minute webinar titled The Internal Art of Balancing Work and Personal Life. So given the global events recently over the past 2 years, and on top of managing work and life, now more than ever, it's important to look within and constantly ask ourselves, am I balancing all the things right now? What do I need more or less of in this moment? Who can I turn to? And am I overlooking something that I value in my personal life at the cost of work? So the agenda for today, we'll start by defining work-life balance according to the literature. And then we're going to look at domains of well-being in our lives and how they're defined as a starting point to kind of direct us to where we might need to pay more attention to this thing called work-life balance. And we're going to look at the 8 dimensions of wellness, which I really want you to take away from today's webinar and take them into your personal life and start to look at these areas more carefully. I'm then going to provide some brief tips on work-life balance, particularly around how to switch off from work after a day. I'll then define self-care, and we can discuss some self-care practices which are a way to reevaluate what we need more of in this work-life balance. I'm going to outline some ways we can practice self-care, and that will be different to everyone, and I will share you what I do currently in my life as self-care practice, and then we're going to close in on question time. So I think what we'll also do is I'll open up the chat now for a couple of questions if you've got any burning questions before we begin. So feel free to post a question in the chat now, or perhaps you can just say hello again. But you'll also get a recording of today's webinar in to your email. And at the end of the webinar, please fill out the feedback form to help us improve and tell us which topic you might like in the future. And remember that you can contact us at team@uprise.co, or you can call 1300 209 371. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat just yet. All right. So before we start, I wondered if anyone had figured out the meaning behind the riddle that I posted in the blurb for today's event. So jump on the chat if you feel like you've already figured it out. But for those who didn't quite catch it, the riddle is: builders have hammers, mechanics have spanners, but therapists have themselves. Has anyone figured this out? Okay. So Alex has said this is super important for people in tech roles in orgs. Yeah, that use instant messaging. Cool. Sarah said therapists are tools themselves. And Kimberly said tools of the trade. Okay. What do others think? So the riddle again is builders have hammers, mechanics have spanners, and therapists have themselves. Okay, Josh says therapists have their own solidarity. Interesting. I would like to unpack that a little bit more with you. I'm sure we don't have the time to go into that, but I am quite interested as to what you mean. So, um, okay. So essentially, that's right. Therapists are the tool themselves. So this riddle is what I teach young psychology students at university from day one to train them up to be future psychologists. So as you can see, the riddle goes, builders have hammers, hammer being the tool, not rocket science. Mechanics have spanners, also a tool, but therapists have themselves. So essentially, as a therapist, as I mentioned, we are the tool. And what that means, if we are the tool, we need to look after ourselves. And in this case, have a work-life balance too. And also what our job is to have that balance just right. And the volume turned up in the correct areas of our lives so we can be effective. But also that places us in the best position to teach clients how to get the balance right just too. So this is how it works in practice. Where mechanics and builders have those physical tools, for example, I focus on myself and I increase my impact in my job as I sharpen myself as the tool. And I wanted to share this with you to demonstrate that I too engage in what we call self-care in my work-life balance. And I will share some tips with you today that I do in my world to get the balance just right for me, so you can start thinking about how to get that balance just right for you. So I work with clients daily and help them to look inwardly by checking on domains of wellness to get the good work-life balance in place. So let's get started. What is work-life balance according to the literature? Work-life balance is a very important phenomenon that is of great concern to employees both in the private and public sector. But it goes beyond prioritizing the work role and one's personal life. Work-life balance also affects an individual's social, psychological, economical, and mental well-being. And then so all these components combined make up the variance that is reflected in our output as an individual, which can impact our performance in the workplace and in the long run. So according to the literature here, we've got work-life balance in its broadest sense is defined as a satisfactory level of involvement or fit between multiple roles in one's life. So how do we even work out the areas that are important in our personal life so that you can start actually addressing this work-life balance? Where would you even start? So within the literature, it's been identified that people often think about wellness in terms of physical health straight away. Nutrition, exercise, weight management, but it's so much more. Wellness is a holistic integration of physical, mental, and for example, for some, spiritual well-being, fueling the body, engaging the mind, and nurturing yourself. And although wellness always includes striving for health, it's actually more about living life fully and is a lifestyle and a personalized approach to living in a way that actually fulfills you. So wellness here, you can see from the slide, encompasses 8 mutually interdependent dimensions as suggested by Stowe in 2017. So you can see from the circles, these are physical, intellectual, emotional, social, spiritual, occupational, financial, and environmental. So attention needs to be given to all these dimensions, as neglect to any one of them over time will adversely affect the other, and so ultimately one's health and well-being and overall quality of life. But they don't actually, however, have to be equally balanced. So rather, we should aim instead to strive for a personal harmony that feels more authentic to us. So we naturally have our own priorities and approaches to life and aspirations, and including our own views of what it means to live a life fully. So let's look at each of these in turn. So we've got the physical dimension. This looks like caring for your body to stay healthy now and in the future. the intellectual dimension, which looks like growing intellectually, maintaining curiosity about learning something. Maybe you might be studying another degree at the moment. Intellectual dimension also covers valuing like this long life learning, understanding that there's always professional development we can be doing. Expanding knowledge and skills whilst discovering the potential for sharing your gifts with others. Emotional dimension. This one's tough. Understanding and respecting your feelings, values, and attitudes. Appreciating the feelings of others. Managing your emotions in a constructive way. I often work with my clients, and that's usually something that we always don't get taught. We have to kind of learn as we go along in life as adults in how to manage our emotions in a constructive way. Feeling positive and enthusiastic about your life, that's part of the emotional dimension. When we look at the social dimension, it's maintaining these healthy relationships in your personal life, enjoying being with others, developing friendships and intimate relationships, caring for others, and letting others care about you. I know that it's hard if you are doing all the things and you have many hats that you wear in your life. It might be hard for you to let others care for you. There's also a spiritual dimension. So this goes beyond religion. It's more about finding purpose for yourself and value and meaning in your life without organized religion. So participating in activities that are consistent with your values and beliefs. Then we have work, vocational, or in other words, occupational dimension, which I'll be talking about later. This is participating in work that provides personal satisfaction and life enrichment that is consistent with your values, goals, and lifestyle. So work is obviously going to be stressful at times. Maybe you've got too many competing deadlines and tasks and not enough perhaps support at different times, and you can feel really overwhelmed. But what's important throughout today's webinar is that you look at trying to balance the work tasks and not actually cancelling out you and your personal life at the cost of work. And so in your work, it's really important that you're contributing your unique gifts and skills and talents that is personally meaningful and rewarding. When we look at the financial dimension of the 8 dimensions of wellness, this looks like managing your resources to live within your means, making informed financial decisions, investments, setting realistic goals, preparing for short and long-term needs and for emergencies. And so being aware that everyone's financial values and needs and circumstances are different. Now, you're all high-functioning individuals that are with me today. So I'm sure, given that you are here and you're working, you probably are focusing some attention to this dimension. Then there's the environmental dimension. And so this looks like understanding how your social, natural, and built environments affect your health and well-being, and being aware that an unstable state of the earth and the effects of your daily habits on the physical environment do impact the future. And so kind of finding ways in your life that demonstrate a commitment to a more sustainable planet. So things that I do in my world are like, I have a compost, I try not to use soft plastics, I use paper straws, and I try and use obviously a reusable coffee cup, sustainable clothing, sustainable makeup, and so I'm looking sustainably at myself and my practices. And living sustainably is actually a really important way that we can remind ourselves, okay, well, how can I sustain myself personally and professionally? And this is what it looks like within work-life balance. So, given all that I've just said, I want you to take a moment and reflect on which dimension sticks out to you right now. And if you're brave enough, tell us why in the chat. Do you think one of these areas requires more attention? Or perhaps maybe you're devoting too much time to one domain and maybe neglecting the others? So I'll read them again. Emotional, spiritual, intellectual, physical, environmental, financial, occupational, and social. Which part of these 8 dimensions are speaking to you right now? Social and emotional, Kimberly. Okay. Emotional, which is at the top. Nice. Yeah. Financial live on. Okay. Hermit, need to socialize more. Yeah. I think with COVID, it's been hard. I think I've been devoting 90% of my attention solely to work. Okay. Yeah. Fair. Emotional, financial, physical and social needs more attention. Fiona, occupational and social. Okay. Good. So we're starting to reflect on just even in this moment, looking at these 8 dimensions. Okay, like I need to stop for a moment and pause and go, what do I need more of? Um, oh, Kimberly, you've had COVID. I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's hit a lot of people hard. Um, yeah, and it has really shaken up the world, hasn't it? So I'm so glad that you're joining today so we can take stock around self-care. Sarah says physical, getting exhausted mentally from work, so not motivated to do much else. Yep, absolutely fair enough. And so looking at these dimensions has already shown benefit to just highlight these areas and pinpoint what could be actionable realistically. So good. Okay, so we've looked at these 8 domains. Now we're going to go a little bit deeper into the occupational wellness dimension and talk about work. So, some tips for work-life balance. Given all that I've said, I think it's important to look and focus on our occupational domain of wellness, which can also bring many other benefits like socially, financially, and intellectually. So we know from the research that when we take kind of care of one domain, it impacts others. So the work-life balance has grown into much more of an appealing concept at the moment. An increasing number of companies are relying on employees, that means you, to lead a more balanced lifestyle as balanced, happy employees that are ultimately, yes, more productive and motivated. So if a company unconsciously kind of, if we don't have boundaries, we can kind of let work come into our private life with too much overtime or an unnatural amount of pressure, which will inevitably result in dissatisfaction and stress that can then kind of lead to decreased productivity. So what we know for certain is that everyone benefits when you have a work-life balance. So our performance-orientated society also kind of often disregards the importance of the happy employee principle, which still kind of causes a bit of confusion and skepticism. This is probably because, I guess this is due to competition and the fact that every important link in the chain at work must function in order to remain competitive, especially in terms of, the global events recently with the shortage of workers and the economic developments that have happened. Something that's often misunderstood is the fact that employees are not machines. You're not a machine. You can't work incessantly during the day and simply fill your tank at night in order to repeat it all again the next day. And so in this case, some people work in order to live and not the other way around. So today we're looking at the occupational domain of wellness and learning how to switch off from work in a healthy way and finding a good balance. And so what I'd like to do is give you some quick tips now in how to switch off so we can have a clear line between work and personal life. Here are some brief tips that I mentioned I'd share with you. So I hope you're all enjoying this meme. I think it's really cute and a really good reminder. So the first one is check your phone as little as possible when the workday is done. So in one study, researchers recruited, for example, parents who were visiting a science museum with their kids. One group of parents were told to check their phone as much as possible whilst they were at the museum with their kids. And the other group were told to check their phones as little as possible with their kids at the museum. And then after the visit, it was found that the parents, obviously, who used their phones reported that the experience at the museum was definitely less meaningful, but also that they felt lonelier. So I wonder if anyone struggles with this. finding it tricky to put your phone down after work. It's such an important thing to do. So a real practical way we can put this into practice is setting a reminder on your phone when the workday is done, to remind yourself to put down your phone after work. So Hazi's just said something really important, after work or during work. So, yeah, I mean, phones are very distracting, especially if you are not particularly meant to use it on task while you're at the job. So yeah, maybe even setting a reminder to put your phone down, because you might even find that the phone will be in your hand and the alarm will go off, and then it'll, oops, okay, I'll put that down. So that might be a practical way to try and build that into the work life. So Ian said here that he makes a rule to place his phone on silent for at least 2 hours after work. I think that is fantastic. And Alexander's just said, is this dedicated for work phones or personal phones you use for work as well? I think if you're using a personal phone for work, that's tricky. I mean, ideally, it would be incredible just to have them separately, but I understand that can't always happen. But yeah, this is typically directed at the phone that you use for work, just to put it down. Yvonne said that most phones allow you to put work mode on personal mode and sleep mode. I absolutely agree. I've just updated my iPhone, and I love the sleep mode. I think that's fantastic. And then the work and focus mode. And then you can, yeah, Yvonne's right, allow those favorite contacts to come through when you have put it on those modes. So, so Josh is asking why it's important to have these good and bad, the reasons why good and bad to have boundaries like this for your phone. So when you have your phone around you after work, it's typically, and if you're doing stuff for work, you might always constantly check it. It's way too tempting to check work emails. It's way too easy to just kind of check a notification on Slack and reply to it after hours. Remembering that if we're trying to look at the social domain of wellness, if we go home and we're in front of our phones still, even after a long day of work, our relationships can maybe get a little bit, I guess, interrupted if we're having conversations with others. Oh, okay, like let me just check my phone quickly, and it will distract you from looking at tending to your other areas of wellness after work. So your personal life, it's so important to prioritize your personal life. Josh, did that help? Did that give you a clear example? Cool. So Josh mentions that it was tricky working from home in 2020, having a phone. There was kind of no clear line between work and personal life. Yeah, I agree. And so, yeah, we're gonna touch on that a little bit more. You're welcome. Okay, so the next tip. It's okay to rest. Rest is a weapon and sleep is a superpower. So this follows on really nicely from Josh's point. As we remake our models of work, given the recent global challenges, for example, with COVID, now is our opportunity to kind of create a new culture that respects time. So the first step toward this is reframing our thoughts about what rest means. So I want you to reflect for a moment. What do you think about when you hear the word rest? Recovery, relax. Yeah. Recovery, relax, sleep. They all sound beautiful. Yes. But you might also maybe worry that you might be not productive enough at work, or perhaps you're letting others down. So when we have time off, we need to focus on ways we can enjoy the present moment and savor rest time. So we're allowed to take regular breaks during the day, or have a little nap, or meditate, or stretch. So remembering that rest is a weapon, and I want you to start seeing that taking rests and regular breaks throughout your day is a superpower, as opposed to seeing it as a barrier to our work. Another one, set boundaries. I'm just looking at the time. I know that this webinar is only for half an hour, but I actually think we're going to run over time, and I hope that's going to be okay. I'll just keep going, and if the recording, the recording will still take place, but you can come back to the recording. You'll get an email of it. So set boundaries. This is the most uncomplicated way to unplug and enjoy your downtime after work, or if you take an extended break, to set those boundaries. So consider the amount of hours you work in the day. So for example, if your office hours are 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., that makes 8 hours. And if you set the maximum limit to 9 hours, if there's anything beyond that, your tasks go to the next day. Oh, okay, cool. Alex said that this is blocked out for 60 minutes. Oh, that is fantastic. Awesome. Cool. So setting boundaries also means adding barriers for yourself to go back to work once the workday is over. Perfect. So you can do that by logging out of all your work-related platforms at the end of the day, or remove the communication apps and email apps from your personal phone. In this way, setting boundaries kind of lets others know about these boundaries, and you can actively unplug. In turn, kind of communicating this to your colleagues is important. You'll naturally then, I guess, role model this good boundary setting behavior to them. So another example of boundary setting is letting people know you are not reachable past a certain point in time that you deem relevant, of course, to your working hours. So including that you're not responsible for answering emails after this time. So if you haven't yet, maybe consider over Easter, if you celebrate Easter, letting them know, in an email, I'm not going to be available, and set that boundary and let them know when you'll be back. This is a good way to switch off work to enjoy personal life. Another one is practice mindfulness. This is a good tip, and I think this one helps us to unplug and disconnect completely after a long day. It's important to nurture a calm and tranquil mind. And so the best and proven scientific way to bring calm to our minds and our bodies is to practice mindfulness. In the simplest terms, mindfulness is the art of channeling all your focus and energy into the present moment in your life right now. So when you practice mindfulness, you surrender your worries about the future and your insecurities. So even science validates the power of mindfulness and its efficiency in mitigating stress. And so here are some of the other amazing benefits of mindfulness that you may not know. Science has proven that mindfulness helps to reduce stress and settle feelings of anxiety. Mindfulness works to reduce depressive and negative thoughts. It helps to suppress rumination, instigates a sense of positivity, and mindfulness importantly helps us foster a feeling of contentment and happiness. So I want you to potentially think about considering spending just 10 minutes on meditation or a mindfulness-based activity after work. Maybe try today. And in this way, you'll be able to achieve an immediate disconnect from work, because mindfulness encourages you into a completely different headspace. So it's a really good way to switch off work. Uprise, as you can see in the picture I've got on the screen, has a good library of modules on mindfulness that can be your go-to after your day at work as a way to switch off. So I'm seeing here that Ian said, I'm lucky as my manager has a strict rule to not speak about work with us outside of business hours. Oof, that's great. So Monash University has an online mindfulness course, which is free. So thank you so much, Ian. I think that's a really good resource. Fantastic. So switching off from work is attending to our occupational dimension of wellness. And this means that we are inevitably then working toward balancing work and personal life. But what about the other areas of our life? So self-care is an important way to maintain a healthy relationship with yourself. It means doing things that take care of our minds, bodies, and souls, and by engaging in activities that promote well-being and reduce stress. And doing so enhances our ability to live fully, vibrantly, and effectively. So what is self-care? Self-care is a way to provide yourself a space to work out how you're going in general and how to manage your work-life balance, focusing on the personal aspects of your world and what you need. So sometimes when we're so busy doing all the things, we forget ourselves and we forget what we really enjoy the most. And this can then just become a habit. So what I would like is to share now some examples of self-care, which you can do practically in your lifestyle to tend to the other 7 domains of wellness that we were talking about before. So we've talked about occupational wellness and switching off from work, but now we're going to try and touch on self-care as a practice to attend to the 7 other wellness dimensions. So I would really encourage you all to make self-care become a part of your lifestyle. So that this way, when you're doing self-care, you can see, am I balancing, my work-life balance okay right now? And I've got some prompting questions later for you to reflect on when you are engaging in self-care. So self-care examples are cooking or baking. I'm not much of a baker. I have a sweet tooth, and so I really like savory food. So like baking a roast for me, for example, is a really nice way of self-care. Um, I'm not the best cake baker. I'm not sure about you. But also there are things like getting a massage or exercising, going for a walk and listening to music. We're going to play self-care kind of bingo in a moment to see what you prefer in terms of self-care. So remembering that in light of diminishing resources kind of globally, and whether it be because of COVID or other world crises, the subsequent high risk for worker burnout is always on the agenda. And so self-care remains an important vehicle for promoting worker well-being and is your crucial element in balancing work and personal life. So let's play kind of this self-care bingo. There's more to practicing self-care than you think. Some say there's an art to it, and it kind of is, but putting self-care into practice is a lot easier and more effective when we understand A, the different domains, and B, the effective strategies for self-care. So what I think is important to talk about is that we can combine some of these too. So physical well-being, social wellness, and kind of mental wellness together comprise our overall health in general, according to the literature. So therefore, practicing self-care strategies from a combination of physical, social, and inner care domains will actually holistically support your health and well-being. So combined, these strategies need to be applied in both your personal and professional contexts. So when I'm thinking about combining, community sport is one that comes to mind for me when I think about combining the physical, social, and mental well-being. But if community sport's not your thing, maybe going for a walk with a friend is. So that's combining the physical aspect, social and psychological, and also the emotional, because you're getting kind of your emotional fix there when you're in relationship going for a walk. So essentially, the idea is that all of these small acts of self-care do add up to complete the variance that touches on the 8 domains of wellness. So my wish here for everyone today is that you would start to build these small acts of self-care into your daily life. So ideally, I'd like you to try and do 5 of these things each day and simply focus on integrating these 5 consistently. If you feel like that's too high, fair enough. You can maybe just start with 1. So my favorite when I'm looking at the screen here are absolutely a manicure, a warm bath, a face mask, a dance party, and podcasts. So these are the types of self-care activities that I do when I've got more time. So yes, as evidence, I have done my nails and I tried a new trend. It's not French, it's colored French. So I'm trying to rock it. I'm trying to pull it off. It's a TikTok trend. Not sure if I'm really rocking it, but people are noticing. So not sure what they think about it. But manicures are my thing. And then that's only though when I have a long period of kind of time and I have to block out that time. For some of the things I do daily, from this self-care bingo image is stay hydrated and stretch. I eat healthy. I try and go for a walk each day, but I also unplug and I celebrate the small wins after each day. And this usually happens around my family dinner table. And of course, it's me. I sit there and I say, okay, everyone, so like, what's the highlight of your day? And we'll sit there and we'll celebrate the small wins. So I think that's really important. A sense of gratitude is important for self-care. So can I ask you now, have a look at this SelfCare Bingo image and tell me, which are your top 3 practices from the blue boxes that you like? I want you to write them in the chat. So if you're walking and you can't see, yeah, bath, read, walk. Tanya said, listen to music, go for a walk, face mask with my daughter, that's fun. Bath, reading, a brunch date, music, movies, walking, nap. Okay. Nice. Claire, that's fair. Washed sheets. So good. Okay, so Kay said declutter, cleaning, watch a movie. Nice. Anna said declutter closet. Self-care is the gym before you start your day. Then you have a coffee and a walk with your dogs. Awesome. Decluttering is a never-ending job. Yeah, new hobby. Hi, Babu. Great that you could join us. Okay, Alex said not all of them on the list, but reading, social camping, and playing games. So there's some things that he really likes to do. And Cherie said gardening. Okay, nice. So I did a little bit of homework for you. I know you can't really see this right now, but I put together a list of 50 self-care practices that you could do that fit your that fit any schedule. So feel free to come back to this slide later on and rewatch the recording. I want you to pause the recording. This is slide number 21, and we are about, I think, 40 minutes in. So self-care practices for yourself. Or you can screenshot it now on the computer, but it looks kind of small, so you're going to have to kind of expand it. But there are 50 there. So there are some other ones that you can consider. What's important, though, is that we need to be intentional with the self-care. I want you to intentionally spend some time planning out the self-care practices that you can realistically commit to for yourself each week. So for me, I do this on a Sunday night. I spend some time sitting down with my phone. I look over my week and I think, what are the different self-care practices that I can realistically do this week? And then I actually set reminders to do them one day before and 10 minutes before I intend to engage in them. So that is a way we really need to be intentional. It's all fantastic that you're here and you're in this webinar, but let's take it further. You need to be intentional and plan out time for your self-care. Yeah, I think Alexander brings up a really good point. The ones in blue, no, they're not more important to do. I mean, I did kind of think that they were more achievable in everyday practice, but it's just the way I formatted the table. So they are all just as good as each other. Good question. So now is further question time in the chat box. We've got some time together. We've got about 18 minutes if you like. I'm here for 18 minutes. And if you've got any questions surrounding self-care before we wrap up, or about work-life balance. And yeah, if you get the chance, please jump in the chat and check out the link for feedback. Remembering that you'll get a recording sent to your email. And if you have a burning question later, you're more than welcome to email us, so team@uprise.co. So who's got a question? I've still got some take-home messages, but I just wanted to know if you have. Okay, so Yvonne has said, can you please send me the link for, is that for the feedback, Yvonne? Okay, you can get someone to do that. That'll go to your email as well with the recording. So any burning questions about work-life balance? Okay, here we go. Do you have any suggestions for people that do on-call work, where work will interrupt them in their personal time? Yeah, I do actually. I remember I had I was coaching someone through this once upon a time, and it was just around kind of radically accepting that that was the nature of their job. And I think communicating with those around them that there was going to be an interruption, and kind of, so for example, they were on a camping trip and they were nervous about getting a work call, but actually it didn't happen. And so there are going to be times when you're doing on-call work where you might not get a call. And so it's important that when you are on call that you are doing self-care, so you're not kind of completely disregarding your personal life. So this person knew they were going on call and actually did go camping and knew that they were going to be able to attend to the call. So it's making sure you're not neglecting that, that you're still making space for the personal time, but when you are on call, you're able to just kind of communicate with those around you. I'm going to be on call. I just want to let you know. And just, yeah, try and do call containment as well. I hope that helps. Kimberly, I find it hard to rest my mind and switch off, and tried meditation. So I've bought a few books and now I need new reading glasses. Yes, well, that's a top priority, isn't it, to go and get some glasses. It's great to hear that you've, found a few new books. Okay, tips to stop getting distracted from the current task. Yep, if you're finding it hard to do the current task, I just stop. I just stop and go, oh, okay, I'm finding it hard to do this task. Maybe I'm just going to check out the mindfulness stuff on the Uprise library for a moment, and just reset your mind. You know, it's hard when we put pressure on ourselves to always be on task. But yeah, it's definitely, not multitasking and concentrating on one thing. It's hard in this day and age, I think. But just being kind to yourself and knowing that there are ways to manage tasks. There's also time limits. So I hope that helps. There's always, I'll mention this later, but it might be good to, have a look at some other ways that are going to work for you, to stop getting distracted from the current task. This might look like a bit more planning, Cherie, like careful planning so that you've got some time set out. But definitely having those breaks are important. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. I found intentionality is so key, enabled a lot of progress. Can you share your perspective or experience with being intentional or not being? Intentionality is so key, enabled a lot of progress. Oh yeah, okay, now I'm reading that right. Okay, so not being intentional, it's just a fast train to, I guess, stress. I think when we're intentional about our self-care, we are really tending to ourselves. And so that means that we're kind of filling up our cup so that it doesn't drain out too much. When we're not intentional, it goes out the window. If you're not intentional about your self-care, you just forget, or you'll just prioritize someone else, or you will just work more, or you'll just fill up the time with doing other things that aren't for you. So got to be intentional. I think that's really important, Josh. Thank you. Might be a bit basic, but some example scripts for ways to push back and say no to work demands or ask for more time to deliver things. Yeah, okay. So I would go back to the recording later and have a look at the slide where it says setting boundaries. And it's also about the language we use. So it's okay to ask for a little bit of extra time for a deadline. And just delegating, I think, is important. So I don't know if it's basic. I think what you're asking for is really detailed, and I think it's really an intentional way to strategize, a way to ask for more time to deliver things. So I guess it's about, just chatting to your boss and saying, hey, like I think I need some more time here. Is it possible that I could hand this in, tomorrow at 5 p.m. instead of today at 4. Just asking in advance, I think, is important, and that comes back to planning. Okay, so I think we've got time for a few more questions. So some tips for stopping work on time and not accidentally working overtime, which is so easy with working from home using personal equipment. Yes, yes. So this one takes practice, I think, if we've already kind of gotten into a habit of um, uh, working overtime when we're at home. It's important to, I guess, watch the recording again and really go through each step around those tips that I shared with you. So um, but yeah, stopping work on time, it's, you got to commit to it. You've got to intentionally try to plan. Reminders in your phone, I think, is always a really good go-to strategy. Setting an alarm and saying it's time to stop work now. And then that way you can't really ignore an alarm. That's a quick hot tip. Okay, so I want to make sure that I can try and get to the questions. Okay. How to switch off between work mode and mum mode because we work from home. Yes. I think there's going to be more research that's going to come out surrounding parenting and working from home. I think that it is an absolute art. That one is a really fine art. So I am, shout out to you, Jewel, for taking on that task, because it is incredible that you can manage both within the same roof. Work mode and mum mode, it's hats, isn't it? So it sounds like you are in a supportive environment where you can work flexible working hours. So I would just keep doing that and actually plan out the plan in self-care, so that maybe that self-care practice can actually help you switch from work mode to mum mode. So maybe, doing some mindfulness, actually, I think would be really helpful. So shutting your laptop, jumping on the mindfulness modules on the Uprise app and just kind of going, okay, I'm going to switch off from work mode to mum mode now. Being intentional about that. I hope that helps. So there are some take-home messages today. A balanced life is one where we spread our energy and effort into attending to our wellness. The neglect of one or more areas or anchor points might threaten the vitality of the whole. Self-care should become a part of your lifestyle, because it's in these moments that we're able to tend to one of the 8 or other domains of wellness that, in effect, has an impact on our work-life balance. So to check in again and see how your work-life balance is going, feel free to come back to this webinar recording and listen to it again. Or perhaps from today's webinar, you might be wondering about booking in a session if you feel like you want to expand on the conversations surrounding your work-life balance. And here finally are some questions you can ask yourself when engaging in self-care. Ask yourself the following questions surrounding work-life balance. Feel free to take a photo of this slide. I think this one is really important. But the questions are, am I balancing all the things right now? What do I need more or less of in this moment? Who can I turn to? Am I overlooking something that I value at the cost of work? And what can I do to address the balance? I'll leave this slide up here for a couple more moments. If you have any thoughts about this, feel free to pop them in the chat. Okay, another reminder to check out the resources on the Uprise library so you can instantly actually engage in self-care after this webinar if you want, and beyond. If Uprise is not your EAP provider, then please check in with your HR to check the right number for you to call for EAP assistance. Other than that, thank you for joining me today. I hope you got a lot out of this webinar, and I hope that you have learned a lot about self-care. You're so welcome, everyone. And cool, I'm glad it's been a helpful reminder. Some good tips have come through. Very thoughtful reflections from all of you. So thank you. You're welcome, Josh. Okay, so all the best and take self care. Thanks, everyone.